Violence against children during war reached extreme levels last year. That's according to the United Nations. In the annual Children in Armed Conflict report, the UN has blacklisted Hamas, Islamic Jihad and the Israeli military for the killing and maiming of children and for attacks on schools and hospitals. The war in Sudan is also highlighted in the report, which blacklists Sudan's army and their rival paramilitary forces for crimes against children. Sudan saw a nearly five-fold increase in violence against children between 2022 and 2023. The conflict between generals vying for power has been raging since last year. The civil war there has caused mass displacement and a threat of famine.
7-year-old Retaj is doing her daily chores. She fled to the Zamzam refugee camp in Darfur with her family to escape the clashes in the city of El Fasher.
Before the war, we used to play. I came here with my mother, brothers and uncles. My dad is back home.
As more families seek refuge from the violence, food and resources are being stretched. Malnutrition rates in children under 5 in this refugee camp are twice as high as in central Darfur.
Our lives have become difficult. Now, as you can see, we don't have anything. I can't even make dinner for my kids.
The conflict began over a year ago and rages across swathes of the country as the paramilitary group the Rapid Support Forces battle for control against the Sudanese army. A recent attack by the RSF on a village around 100 kilometres south of the capital Khartoum left 100 people dead. The ongoing clashes have sparked condemnation from the UN and a pledge by the International Criminal Court to investigate.
I don't want there to be any doubt that the information being collected by my office on a daily basis from Darfur seems to disclose an organised, systematic and a profound attack on human dignity. And I believe, based upon the information we are receiving, that we are on the precipice of something even worse.
The ICC is appealing for as much evidence as possible from witnesses in Sudan. As the violence continues, it is the country's children who are the worst affected.
Let's speak now to Mutassim A. Ali. He's a legal advisor for the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. Now, the UN's report says there has been a five-fold increase in grave violations against children in the past 2 years. Can you explain what this staggering number means?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for the interest. I think the UN report is really part of many other reports that demonstrate how brutal this war is. Of course, Sudan has been in a perpetual wars right since its independence in 1953. But this war that started in April 2023 and still continues until today has been really one of the most brutal wars, in part because the perpetrators themselves document the violations and the abuses. And so the report by the UN is significant, but it's still, to say that the war in progress basically violated the rights of children is really very little too late. And so the parties actually violated many international human rights and humanitarian law and instruments, and therefore I think the situation is a lot more catastrophic.
Now, the conflict is likely to continue. Tell us what can actually be done to reduce the suffering of the people and especially the suffering of the children.
I mean, you said precisely that the conflict is really, we do not see that the conflict will end sometime soon, unfortunately. And in part, I think we see that the international community is not doing enough to stop the war in Sudan. I think in terms of how this conflict can be stopped, I think there are three three things that the international community and communities of democracies can do. Number one is to work on civilian protection front, right? And that begins, for example, by deploying UN, perhaps in coordination with the African Union, to deploy a sort of a civilian protection mechanism. That's really crucial, given the fact that the parties really do not care about the civilian lives, right? We've seen staggering numbers of people are being killed, rape has been used as a weapon of war, and there are many other, many more crimes. Second, I think there is a need to ramp up the humanitarian aid, right? There was a conference in Paris earlier this year, which they pledged sort of amount of money, but still only 16% of that of the humanitarian aid that is needed to support the civilians in Sudan has been met so far, and therefore I think there is a need to make humanitarian aid available immediatally. And third, I think there is it is important to work on the accountability front. That begins by calling out the warring parties, specifically the Rapid Support Forces that is committing genocidal acts in Darfur in particular, and of course other serious human rights violations and perhaps war crimes and crimes against humanity in other parts of Sudan. They must be called out, and especially their enablers as well, right? You know that there are many foreign actors involved in this as well, and so I think these are the perhaps the more practical acts that the international community can do.
Mutasem Ali there, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.